Even the simplest of talking head style YouTube videos need a little extra polish. But who wants to spend more time editing your YouTube videos? Well, today you're gonna watch me polish a YouTube video in Premiere Pro. This is a simple talking head video. And I'm gonna show you how I do it really quickly by fine tuning, adding some more media like B-roll or memes. You know, I love a good meme every once in a while. And there's something a little bit extra, like the cherry on top, the whole reason why I'm actually using Premiere Pro to polish my edits before I publish them to YouTube. Plus, I want to show you what happens if you skip the very last step, and it's not good. So let's jump into Premiere Pro over here. What I have is basically a blank slate to work with that I add my files into and start making those polished edits. Now, I never really start from scratch with Premiere Pro. I created a project file that I duplicate into every one of my project folders. So I have a blank slate timeline and then what I call a video template with stuff on it. And yes, that's really what I call it. And that just has like my lower third file with my name and my TikTok, my Instagram. These are all animated files. And this has a bunch of stuff, memes that I use, text effects that I use, transitions that I use, and we'll get into all that stuff in just a minute. But this is what my blank slate Premiere Pro project file looks like. I have some graphics, some B-roll, music, sound effects, anything that I normally might use in a video, not in every video, but something I might reuse. I put it all into this Premiere Pro project. So I'm starting from scratch, but I'm also kind of starting with a whole bunch of assets ready to go. Now, usually my first phase of editing actually happens in Descript, and I've already done my rough cut here. I just need to import this into Premiere Pro. So the way that I do that is up in the top right under Publish, I go to Export and then Timeline, and I just make sure that I have Premiere selected. There's some other options here, DaVinci, Final Cut. Premiere is selected, and I have include media files unchecked and create a separate track for each file also unchecked. And then I just hit export. And what this does is actually creates an XML file of your Descript edit. So I took one long talking head video recording that I did, made my rough cuts in Descript, and then the XML file is basically like a data file that all I have to do is import it into Premiere Pro, and all of those cuts will then be in my Premiere Pro timeline. So check this out. Let's open Premiere Pro back up here. So you can see I'm still in my blank slate era, and I have my XML file here, and I'm just going to drag this XML file over to my media bin in Premiere Pro. So highlighted here, you can see in my media bin that I have these 3 files that were just imported when that XML file was brought in. One of them is a timeline, so that looks like this. So these are just all of the cuts. This is basically the Descript file with all of the cuts exactly where I made them. And then you have the actual media, the actual clips that were brought in, right? So I recorded the video, I brought it into Descript, I made the rough cut edits. It imported that source file for me, and there's 2 source files because we have a talking head video and then we have one little screen recording portion that I'm gonna put in here too. So what I like to do is just to make sure that all of my settings are consistent, I always take all of the clips, Command A, copy them all, bring them over to the blank slate and paste them in. There have been times that maybe the aspect ratio of what I recorded in Descript isn't a 16:9, or maybe I recorded my screen so it's a little bit wonky, and I just want to make sure that the video that I'm actually editing for YouTube, that I'm going to publish on YouTube, is 16:9 ratio, 29.97 frames per second. And then usually what I do is I take the title, I make the blank slate that title, and then I delete that imported timeline from Descript just to keep my media bin kind of clean and as organized as possible. Now, I would love to get fancy with this edit right away. Throw in some memes, throw in my lower thirds, add in some, I don't know, sound effects or something. And we're going to get there, but not quite yet. So just stick with me here. I like to follow my own editing method, which I call BFF method: basic, fine tune, and fancy. The basic edits have pretty much already been done with Descript. That's where I get rid of all the stuff that I don't want in the video, all of the mistakes, and I'm just left with the foundation to sort of build upon. So once I bring it into Premiere Pro and I polish everything, that's where we do the fine tuning and then get fancy. So it's basic, fine tune, and fancy. So the first thing that I'm going to start off with here right off the bat on my timeline is we're going to just zoom right in, and all of the places where I have made a cut, I have to, I think of it as cleaning them up. I have to make sure there isn't any dead space or like a weird cutoff. I want my videos to sound natural. When you're watching it, I want it to sound like we're having a conversation or feel like we're having a conversation. And if you don't clean up in between your cuts, it can feel really disjointed. And so I like to go in and kind of smooth things out. So here's what I do. I start at the very beginning. I just make sure that we're starting off on a waveform. There's no like awkward, you know what they call it? The millennial pause on TikTok. They pick on us millennials. They call it the millennial pause, where you sit there for like a millisecond before you hit record. Get rid of that. But then I go through and I watch the video back. I watch, I listen, I'm paying attention to make sure there isn't anything that I need to further edit out. Maybe I missed something in the rough cut, or maybe it just comes out kind of weird and I want to get rid of it. So I'm not rough cutting it. I'm just watching it like a viewer and getting to every single cut that I have, zooming way, way, way in, and then fine-tuning this cut. So you can see where the waveforms here start to trail off, and then there's a dead space, a millennial pause, and then there's the waveforms again. That sort of dead space between the waveforms is what I want to get rid of. So usually I'd be listening to this and I'd say, okay, we're going to trim the ends here and here, and then we're just going to butt those right up there together. And that's good enough, but there's an extra smoothing technique that I like to do that I'll get to in just a minute. But let's talk about audio for just a minute, because a really big part of getting a polished edit, regardless of whatever software you're using, is the volume of your audio like correct. Is it high enough? Is it low enough? Is it, Goldilocks just right? What I'm doing as I'm doing the fine tuning is not only watching the video as I'm going, and obviously I'm listening to it as I'm going, but I'm also looking at my meter over here on the right hand side. And if you don't have this, or if you're using any other piece of software, make sure you are looking at your audio meter. So over here under window and then audio meters, you want to make sure that's there, because you might have your volume on your computer super low or super high and think that you need to adjust your volume, or not even realize that the volume is really not where it should be for publishing a YouTube video. Let me show you what I mean. You're looking to make sure that your peaks are happening at around -6, or I'm usually looking at like, if I'm coming in between -12 and -6, I'm okay with that. That's kind of the range that I want to be in. So I'm getting some that are kind of up there in the -9 range, but for the most part, it's a little bit on the low side. So knowing that from my very untrained audio engineering ear, and also seeing that in the audio meter, I know that we need to do a little bit of audio adjusting. And so here's what I do. And this is going to be different for everybody. Pretty much all my videos in the last 6 months, 9 months have been recorded using the Shure SM7 DB. I have those settings like all set up on my computer. I don't mess with them. I use it for Zoom calls. I use it for my YouTube videos, and I don't really adjust anything. So let me just zoom out here on the timeline. I'm going to just select all, and I'm going to hit the G on my keyboard. This adjusts the audio gain. So usually what I do is I come in here and I select normalize all peaks to -6 decibels, and I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to go through and it's going to do that. So now if I play this back, let's look at the audio meter. See how it's a little bit more consistently hitting up against that -6? That's what I'm looking for. So sometimes I do this towards the beginning of when I'm making my edits, like here in the fine tuning phase. Sometimes I do it towards the end. I try not to mess with the audio before I've heard all of the audio, but since this was all from one clip with one microphone, there's a pretty good chance that it all just needs to be raised up a little bit. So before I go through and fine tune the rest of this edit, let's talk about B-roll. There's two ways that I think about B-roll. One is planned out, like I know I'm going to talk to the camera and I'm going to show what I'm talking about with B-roll. The second way is while I'm editing, there might be a place where I stop talking and then I start talking again, and it's a kind of a hard like butt cut. Is that a term? You know what I mean. It's butting up right against each other, and maybe the audio isn't quite matching up, or maybe my head ends over here and then starts over here. We can use B-roll to kind of cover that up. I like to think of it like a B-roll band-aid. I'm not suggesting that you do this between every single butt cut, but if there is a place that is really weird and really janky, you can simply cover it up. You know, if you have your B-roll, like this is a piece of B-roll that includes the screen and my face at the same time. All you have to do is take that chunk of B-roll, the I button on your keyboard, the O button, in and out point, and then I just will drag down just the visual portion and just kind of place it either over the top of the cut like a band-aid, or sometimes just having something at the end of one cut or the beginning of the other cut kind of masks the harshness of those janky butt cuts. But there's one more smoothing thing that I want to show you that is probably unnecessary, but I like to do it. I just like the smooth way that it comes across. So this is the very first clip in this timeline here. So the next clip, I'm going to take the audio and I'm going to pull it down, and I'm just going to drag it over the tiniest bit. It's only about 3 frames. It's hardly anything at all. But what that does is it overlaps the audio going out and the audio coming in. I'm sure nobody cares or notices that I do this, but in my mind, it really makes a difference in the smoothness of those cuts. So this is totally a personal preference, but let's see if I'm right. See, watch this. But there's more. Did I move my camera? I think I must have moved my camera or something. That would be a good spot for the B-roll band-aid, but I'm not showing you that now. So I'm going to take this down, and because I know that usually 3 frames is what I like to do, if I hit Command and then the left arrow, 1, 2, 3, that will take it over exactly 3 frames. Grow your audience on YouTube. But there's more to it than just grow your audience on YouTube. But there's more to it than how it's like on YouTube, but there's more to it. So those were 2 sentences. I screwed up in there somewhere in between, probably 17 times, as I usually do. And I needed to put those 2 parts of the sentence together and make it sound cohesive and feel cohesive. Visually, you still see the cut, but honestly, I think sometimes the most jarring distractions in in a YouTube edit, even just like a basic simple head YouTube edit, is actually in the audio. Like I said, this is probably entirely unnecessary, but I do it anyway. And so I will go through and do this to all of these cuts, unless it seems like I really don't need to do it. And these technically could probably be thought of as a J cut or an L cut. We're just kind of overlapping here. Now, once I have all the B-roll in and my cuts are all smoothed out and everything is looking good and sounding good, it's pretty much like 99% of the way there. I could upload it the way that it is, but there is some sort of fancy stuff I like to do, basic, fine tune, and fancy. And there's this extra little bit of polish, a little cherry on top of the sundae that I like to include, that I'll get to in just a moment. But I want to show you what happens next, because I have this template over here, video template with stuff on it. One of the things that I like to do is grab my lower third. So the lower third is a animated video file. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to paste it in, and wherever it is that I mention my name, I will put it there. I created this lower third with a template and Adobe After Effects. It's kind of a pain in the butt, I'll be honest with you, but I'll show you a better place to create lower thirds in just a moment, right here within Premiere Pro. Any lower thirds always go in during the fancy phase. I have a lower third from, like, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram. But to be totally honest with you, I don't care if you follow me in those places. I just want you to follow me here on YouTube. Like, YouTube is where it's at. So I don't even put those things in anymore. And sometimes I even forget to put in my name lower third too. I have some memes saved in here of things that I, like to use. I love this Shaq meme. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this in wherever it is that I am talking about memes. And then this just kind of shows up as an animation there, and you can manipulate it, make it bigger, smaller. Ooh. Whatever you want to do there. Change the location. It just acts like a regular video file, because it is. And by the way, this is just a green screen meme, and it has the green screen applied to it. So if you come over to effects and then key, you want ultra key, drag this down to the meme file. It's not going to do anything yet, because you have to grab that eyedropper and then select the green, and it gets rid of all of the green. Okay, so that's how the memes work with a green screen meme. Now, there's a little something extra I want to share with you, because this is one of the reasons why I polish my videos in Premiere Pro instead of like Final Cut or DaVinci, or just polishing my edits in Descript or something. And that's because of this Premiere Pro extension right here and the Gal toolkit made by Premiere Gal over on Premiere Gal's channel. And what this is a massive collection of lower thirds. So this is where you could create a lower third with your logo and your name and have it glitch in if you want, or there's a bunch of different options here. But there's social media stuff, there's title screens, and it's all animated. You can change the colors, you can change the font, you can obviously change the words in the titles, but I have a couple of favorites that I like to use. And when you see me zoom in or zoom out, like, where's this one? Zoom in and out, right here, zoom in, zoom out. I'm not having to go in and add my little keyframes, and I'm going to zoom in and then it's going to zoom out, and I have to figure out where it's going to do that. All I have to do is literally just take this and drag it down to the timeline, give it just a second to do its thing, and it's going to apply that animation for me like that, and then it zooms back out again. It's so easy, and I think it's just a really easy way to add a little bit of extra polish, a little bit of extra oomph. The transitions work in a similar way. If I take this and I just drag it down to where there is a cut, it's going to take a minute, and then it adds the sound effect for the transition. It adds all of like the blurring and all of the motion and all that stuff. So I'll put a link to the Gal toolkit down in the description. It's not an affiliate link or anything like that. It's a really cool extension that has made editing more fun, I would say. Like it's made making fun edits easier and quicker, and then ultimately it makes editing a lot more fun. And a lot of my like title screens or anytime where I need to have some text come on the screen, like right here, all I have to do is, this is already like the font that I want, the color that I want, just copy this and paste it wherever I want it to go in my project. And then all I have to do is change the words. So it's, or we could even spell everything correctly too, and just change the words, and it automatically animates, and the timing is right, and all the colors and everything can be adjusted, and it's just so cool. Now there's two more things that we have to talk about when it comes to polishing in Premiere Pro, and one of them is like the very last step that you shall not miss. This shall not be skipped when you're editing YouTube videos. But first, let me talk about exporting, and I'll show you my export settings, because exporting videos in any software tends to become sort of cumbersome if you don't know what you're doing. Even if you do know what you're doing, it can tend to be cumbersome. So first of all, I need to select the location. So I'm always saving this to my video folder on my external hard drive. I like to try and remember to add the word final or draft if I think it's a draft, but usually it's a final. And I just add that to the file name. So it's going to save in the folder that I want it to save in, and we'll hit save. So we have the location, we have the file name. I have a preset here. So export, use this. That's a note to myself. Meredith, use this. And it's going to export in H.264 format. And the video is going to be a full 1920 by 1080, frame rate 29.97. All this stuff is, you can see what this is. I can't explain it all to you because I don't understand it all. But this is what it is. The reason why I want to point this out to you is because the settings you choose in here determine how big your file size is. And they determine how big the video is itself, but then you could have a 1920 by 1080 regular YouTube video that is 4 gigabytes, or you could have one that is, what is this? It's about 2 gigabytes, I guess. That's a big difference in the space on your hard drive or your external hard drive, or the time it takes to upload and process on YouTube. We're going to hit export down here. But the one thing you must do, that you had to promise me you're not going to skip this, because I've done this and it's really screwed things up for me. And that is to actually double click and open up your video file and watch the whole thing through before you upload it to YouTube. Because this has happened to me perhaps, I think maybe like 3 times, at least twice that I know of, where I've exported a video specifically with Premiere Pro, and as soon as it's done exporting and it's like Premiere Pro says, you're good, it's 100%, we're done, and the video is right there on my hard drive, I will go and publish it to YouTube, and then I'll get a comment that's like, are you sure that's the whole video? It seems like it cuts off before it's supposed to. And I think it's because there's a tiny fraction of a second where Premiere Pro thinks it's done exporting and my computer thinks it's done exporting, but it's not fully baked yet somehow. Like, it needs to cool off for a second before you upload it to YouTube. So also, it's just good practice to watch the whole thing and make sure it really looks the way you want it to look. Don't be like me. Double click, watch the whole video from beginning to end, make sure it looks good, make sure it sounds good, make sure it ends when it's supposed to end. Now, if you want more step-by-step of how I do my rough cuts and my edits inside of Descript, I will queue that video up for you here. I think it's, I have a lot of Descript tutorials on my channel and a lot more to come. So make sure you hit subscribe for those. But I think this one is kind of the best way to explain it.